Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our three witnesses for all the work you've been doing on this very important question through the years. I'm relatively new to this committee, and I think it was Dr. Chen, you referenced the Dimensions Initiative. As I understand, this was administered by the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, NSERC, for the three federal granting agencies. And obviously it was a handbook to try to help post-secondary institutions to increase equity, diversity, and inclusion in their environments. I think, Dr. Chen, you made reference to this particular initiative and talked about renewing it. And perhaps you could just elaborate a little bit as to what the federal government could do, in your view, to improve this existing initiative.
Well, I think it's, I thank you for that question and for bringing us back to that. And I'm particularly interested in what was launched just last year in the trying to think through what it would mean to modernize the university and college academic staff survey, particularly thinking about EDI and the inclusion of part-time faculty or part-time instructors. And I think Dr. Prentice already spoke to how that's actually a big part of the pay equity considerations at the moment. And in order to lead this, we really need to be done nationally. The pilot that was launched to try and include this, to think about what that would mean, I think will yield for us a number of considerations as we look across the nation. And we know that as we're hiring, our salaries are not only driven by what's happening within our institutions, but obviously in relation to each other. And so to make sure that continues to be funded. I think alongside here, we know that dimensions and certainly the Stats Can work that we all rely upon in this is also dependent on the long form census, that we're asking extensive questions, that we're funding the labor surveys, that we're doing all of that work. And so I think the funding and the ways that, particularly over the last 2 decades, sometimes programs have been pulled back and then they are reintroduced. This really creates barriers to that kind of robust data that's necessary for us then to locate the specific institutional responses. And so I'll stop there. I think the others probably think quite a bit about dimensions as well, so they may have other input.
Thank you so much. I am intrigued by the Federal Contractors Program, and we did receive a submission from the Canadian Association of University Teachers, dated just this September 2023, and the recommendation there is to strengthen the Federal Contractors Program. So could you perhaps, Dr. Prentice, perhaps you could just be very specific as to what you would like to see in terms of strengthening that federal contractors program?
Mm-hmm. So this is a long-standing program of the federal government. I think it dates nearly 3 decades now. Under the federal contractors program, any university which has a contract with the federal government, which is the way most of us through Tri-Council and other grants fund our research, and through which many universities find other operating streams, we're required to report. And one of the requirements for reporting began with gender disaggregated data, but it could and should, I would say, be strengthened so that it includes other axes of inequity. What this will require is that in order for universities to meet reporting requirements and the kind of accountability that comes from external scrutiny, it pushes, it nudges, it coaxes behavior inside universities that is equity enhancing. So the threshold was increased to too high. I think at one point it was 200,000. It's now up to over 1 million on each one. So the threshold could come down. The CAUT probably has a closer handle on how this operates nationally. But I'm aware that at the University of Manitoba, historically, some of the women's groups on campus had to go to the federal contractors compliance reports to learn about what was happening inside of our own universities. So the creation of data for equity has a very positive cascade of effects that can allow other people to use it.
Thank you. There was a third recommendation in this submission, it's worded this way: facilitate the renewal of faculty. And perhaps, Dr. Boon, you could address this particular area and elaborate a little bit more on what precisely the recommendation would mean for the federal government.
Sure. As I mentioned, we've been thinking a lot about this when we do have the opportunity to hire, ensuring that we are doing searches which are targeted at encouraging the widest range of people applying, making sure that we are tracking who is successful in our searches, and thinking a lot about are there any unconscious biases creeping into our processes to do our best to ensure that we're being open and welcoming to all. As we look at who we're bringing into our community, we know, as I mentioned earlier, that in the last 15 years or so, we've almost reached gender parity with respect to the women and men at the assistant and the associate professor ranks. So that reflects hiring over the last 15 years or so. And in the last few years that I've been in this role and looking at who we're hiring each year, we know that we are hiring about 50%, sometimes slightly over that, women each year into our continuing tenure stream and teaching stream positions. We are also thinking a lot about other axes of diversity and enacting programs to ensure that we are welcoming and hiring a wide range of faculty. So those are, I think, all things that are really, really important as part of any program in this space.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now